Is it all right?
Yeah, please do that. And recitation आप खुद कर दीजिए.
जी जी मैं खुद कर लेता हूँ सर.
जी.
Sorry, this mic is on. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. La ilaha illa anta subhanaka inni kuntum minaz zalimin. Honorable speakers, guests, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Ambassador Azaz Ahmed Chaudhry, Director General, Institute of Strategic Studies, Ambassador Khalid Mahmood, Chairman, Board of Governors, Institute of Strategic Studies, it is my pleasure to welcome you to our webinar today on OIC at 50, Strengthening Partnership and Future Prospects. Ladies and gentlemen, the OIC, as you know, is the second largest intergovernmental organization in the world after the United Nations. Founded by a charter in 1969, following decades of deliberations by Muslim scholars and statesmen around the idea of forming a global Islamic association, the OIC today comprises of 57 member states. As such, it is well placed to boost its visibility as a representative forum of Muslim countries and a responsible partner in the propagation of peace, security, and development in the world. In the 50 years of its existence, the OIC has connected with international apparatuses, including every specialized UN agency, government, and civil society organizations to address issues of concern to the Muslims worldwide. In 2005, the OIC adopted a 10-year plan to resolve issues including terrorism, Islamophobia, poor governance, and economic inequality. The OIC has also become active in humanitarian assistance and in 2008 founded the Islamic Cooperation Humanitarian Affairs Department to coordinate the activities of humanitarian organizations. The OIC activities and assistance include long-term development projects as well as including health, education, and agriculture. The establishment of the OIC's Independent Permanent Human Rights Commission in 2011 signaled a newfound commitment to human rights issues within the OIC, promoting a conception of Islamic human rights. The OIC's existence is based on the idea that there is an ideological commonality among its members that is stronger than any differences. As momentous changes have swept across the Muslim world over the past decade, the OIC has emerged as an important voice defending the dignity and rights of its members. OIC has consistently taken a principled stand on two of the longest standing disputes of the Muslim world, Kashmir and Palestine. In both cases, OIC supports and stand on these disputes has been a source of strength for the people in the occupied Kashmir and Palestine, who have waged a heroic struggle against the forces of occupation. The OIC Contact Group on Kashmir has firmly raised its voice against the atrocities of the Indian security forces in Indian occupied Kashmir against the Muslims in that region. The OIC, ladies and gentlemen, stands as a beacon of hope for the entire Muslim world today. With those preliminary words, I would request Director General, Institute of Strategic Studies, Ambassador Azaz Ahmed Chaudhry, for his welcome remarks.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Najam. What a delight it is for the Institute of Strategic Studies to host the 50th Golden Jubilee anniversary of the founding of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. I am particularly pleased because since this year began, we have been wanting to do a number of events, and today, which is the last day of the 50th anniversary, it is our proud privilege to be having the last word in welcoming the OIC as a forum that has been with us for 50 years. We are also very happy that the Honorable Foreign Minister has personally recorded his message for this occasion, although he would not be with us because he was out of town. Otherwise, he had committed that if he was in Islamabad, he would personally attend. And we are doubly pleased that the Secretary General of OIC, His Excellency Yusuf bin Ahmad Al Uthaymeen, has also recorded a message which he would be sharing with us. And our pleasure is to welcome our permanent representative, Ambassador Rizwan Said Sheikh in Jeddah, who would give us the keynote address. Ambassador Rizwan is a veteran, I would say, of OIC world. He has served in the OIC for a number of years and was the spokesperson actually of that organization. And in that capacity, he made us proud. And we have two experts, Mr. Khalid Rahman of IPS and Ahmed Qureshi of Youth Forum. Both have been regular participants of our events. Both have rendered their bit of contribution to promoting and defending the Kashmir cause. And I thank them both for their consistent support to this very important cause for Pakistan. I would now like to make only 4 or 5 points. First, for 50 years, the OIC has served as the central, as the unique platform for Islamic causes. Be it a Palestine issue or Kashmir issue or other conflict situations within the Muslim world, it was always the OIC which acted as the main platform for voicing the collective wish of the people of the Muslims of the world. The second is that there have been other Islamic causes too, where OIC has been speaking out in the last decade or so, in particular on Islamophobia, on fighting extremism and terrorism, on protecting the rights of Muslims in different countries, particularly India, which has a large Muslim minority, at the mercy of a regime currently which is discriminating against them, Babri Mosque, and so many other Islamic causes that OIC has paid its attention to. My third point would be that OIC has also worked in a lesser known way on the socio-economic development of the Muslim world through COMSEC in Istanbul for economic development, through COMSTEC for technological development in Islamabad, and through COMIAC, which is based in Dakar, for cultural cooperation. And Islamic Development Bank too has been forthcoming in this regard. The fourth point I would make is that there has been a debate. How effective has OIC been? There are two views. One is straight and simple, that it has not been effective. Look, all those outstanding issues have not been resolved. The other counter view is that no multilateral organization can run and operate at a pace faster than its member states. Be it the United Nations, ECO, EU, ASEAN, SAARC, what have you. And only 2 days ago, the United Nations Secretary General, while inaugurating, during the inaugural session of the ongoing General Assembly session, made this point that United Nations itself, which is facing the same criticism, cannot be more effective than what its member states want it to be. And therefore, I have never entertained this criticism of OIC, and I would say that OIC has been a very, very useful platform. My fifth and final point would be that for Pakistan in particular, OIC has been of phenomenal support to the cause that we all hold very dear to our hearts, which is the Kashmir dispute. And we know that since 1994, a contact group of the OIC has met regularly, even most recently this month, which has spoken out, and where the two representatives of Kashmiris have gone and spoken to voice the right of the Kashmiris to self-determine their destiny. We also know that since August 2019, it has been a particularly grim situation where OIC stood out and spoke about the atrocities that are being inflicted by the Modi regime and its security forces on the hapless, innocent people of occupied Kashmir. And we are also grateful for the Human Rights Commission of the OIC, Permanent Independent Human Rights Commission of OIC, which has also consistently stood with us. It has also, we have also seen that OIC has spoken about the Muslim minority in India, which we believe ought to receive the support of the Muslim world. And I am also happy that the government of Pakistan this year celebrated and marked this event by issuing a commemorative stamp on the OIC Golden Jubilee celebration. So with these few words, I'm once again very pleased that such amenable and eminent personalities are going to be speaking at this forum, and we are all ears. Thank you, and back to you, Najam.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, as Ambassador Azaz pointed out, we have two important messages, one by the Foreign Minister of Pakistan, Honorable Makhdoom Shah Mahmood Qureshi, and the other one by the Secretary General of the OIC, Honorable Yusuf bin Ahmad Al-Othami. We will begin and play the message by the Honorable Makhdoom Shah Mahmood Qureshi.
Chairman, ISSI, Ambassador Khalid Masood, Director General ISSI, Ambassador Azaz Ahmed Chaudhry, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu Alaikum. It is my pleasure to address the webinar marking the Golden Jubilee year of the establishment of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. I commend the Institute of Strategic Studies for this important initiative. Spurned by the tragic arson attack on Al-Aqsa Mosque over 50 years ago, 25 Muslim states got together to give practical shape to their resolve for safeguarding collective interests, promoting common causes, and advancing shared objectives. The OIC is the embodiment of the age-old ideals of Islamic solidarity inherent in the notion of the Ummah. It is a concrete manifestation of the hopes and aspirations of Muslim states to speak and act in unison, to have a collective voice on world stage, and to have enhanced salience in global affairs. In its journey of half a century, the OIC has made significant strides. Today, with 57 members representing 1.5 billion Muslims spanning 4 continents, the OIC is the second largest grouping of the nations after the United Nations. It has offered Muslim states a platform for forging consensus, undertaking joint endeavors, and taking joint positions at other organizations. It has served as a forum to raise voice and galvanize support for the beleaguered and oppressed Muslim peoples, be they in Palestine or in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Its network of affiliated specialized bodies and subsidiary institutions has paved the way for cooperation across a wide spectrum of areas of common interest, ranging from science and technology to finance and trade, and from education to youth and women affairs. Over the years, various OIC institutions have offered valuable assistance to member states in need, including during the COVID pandemic. Ladies and gentlemen, as a key Muslim state, the largest at the time of independence, Pakistan has always had the Ummah and its interests to its heart. We have been a founding member of the OIC, and as one of its founders, Pakistan has played a seminal role in its development and evolution. Our multifaceted engagement includes being home to two key OIC institutions, COMSTAC and the Islamic Chambers of Commerce, Industry and Agriculture. We have hosted 2 path-breaking summits and 4 sessions of the Council of Foreign Ministers. And we are set to host the 48th session of CFM in Pakistan. Pakistani professionals have played their part in the establishment and operationalization of OIC bodies, particularly the Islamic Development Bank. In a clear manifestation of the importance we attach to OIC, Pakistan recently became one of the few member states to have accredited a dedicated permanent mission to the OIC Secretariat in Jeddah. Ladies and gentlemen, OIC's impressive progress must not make us oblivious of the challenges that continue to afflict and the opportunities that are yet to be fully realized. The Golden Jubilee must be as much an occasion to soberly introspect as it is to celebrate the accomplishments. The Ummah stands today at an inflection point. The sufferings of millions of our brothers and sisters continue unabated. The situation in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir in the wake of India's illegal and unilateral steps and year-long inhuman military siege, communication blackout, and violations of human rights has turned into a grave humanitarian tragedy. Indian occupation forces are committing unspeakable atrocities to silence the voice of the Kashmiris, while India is busy altering the demographic structure of the Indian occupied Kashmir in blatant violation of international law, particularly the 4th Geneva Convention. We appreciate that OIC stands out as the leading international organization that has consistently supported the Kashmir cause through a succession of positive resolutions and statements. The OIC Contact Group on Jammu and Kashmir has been in the vanguard of these endeavors. Let me reiterate that a just and peaceful settlement of the Jammu and Kashmir dispute in accordance with the UN Security Council resolutions remains the only course to durable peace and stability in South Asia. We have no doubt that the OIC will not only continue to provide a major platform to voice the Kashmiris' grievances, but also redouble its efforts to further advance their just cause. Unfortunately, the problem is not limited to the Kashmiris in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir alone. Under the Hindutva-driven, RSS-inspired BJP regime, Islamophobia is receiving state patronage and running rampant in India. About 200 million Indian Muslims are facing a rising wave of Hindutva extremism. This ideology poses a grave threat not only to India's minorities, but also to regional peace and security. The people of Palestine continue to face unremitting oppression and suffering. While reaffirming our solidarity with the people of Palestine and our commitment to a two-state solution, Pakistan reiterates its support for a viable, independent and contiguous state of Palestine on the basis of internationally agreed parameters, the relevant UN and OIC resolutions, with the pre-1967 borders and Al-Quds Al-Sharif as its capital. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a matter of serious concern that Islamophobia and hatred towards Muslims are also on a steep rise in the West and elsewhere. This is disturbingly evident in the recent Islamophobia acts in Europe, from desecration of the Holy Quran in Sweden and Norway to the republication of deeply offensive caricatures of the Holy Prophet by Charlie Hebdo in France. We see a distinct pattern. It is important to confront and combat this new scourge of hatred. Prime Minister Imran Khan forcefully spoke against this repugnant trend in his address to the United Nations General Assembly last year. Pakistan has always played the lead role in combating Islamophobia and will continue to do so in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, the OIC's praiseworthy contributions notwithstanding, the challenges posed to the Muslim world are multidimensional in nature and enormous in magnitude. It is important that the OIC is seen as an efficient, effective and forward-looking organization. With numerous conflicts plaguing the Muslim world, the organization needs to strengthen its role in the matters related to peace and security and conflict resolution. While the OIC pronouncements on Palestine and Kashmir are valuable, the organization should contemplate initiating practical steps to increase pressure on the occupying powers. It should reinvigorate its efforts to counter the menace of hate speech, blasphemy, and Islamophobia. It should also take effective steps for protection of the fundamental human rights of the Muslim minorities across the globe. Increasing intra-OIC trade and strengthening scientific and technical cooperation are other prerequisites. Most importantly, the organization must promote unity in its ranks, which remains a prerequisite for concerted action at the international level. Indeed, unity and cohesion of the Ummah is an imperative to which there is no alternative. Let me conclude my remarks with a verse from Surah Al-Imran, which enjoins the faithful to hold firmly to the rope of Allah altogether and do not become divided. I thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, next we have a message by the Secretary General of the Organization of the Islamic Conference, Honorable Yusuf bin Ahmed Al-Othami. We will be playing the message for you shortly.
His Excellency, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, Excellencies, Director of the Institute of Strategic Studies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Wa bismillahir rahmanir rahim. It's a pleasure for me to join this important event held in commemoration of the 50th anniversary of the establishment of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, OIC. I want to seize this opportunity to commend the government of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan and the Institute of Strategic Study for organizing this event. You know, as aware all of us, that Pakistan was the founding member state and contribute positively in peace and security in the world, in addition to other events that been established by OIC. And for that, I am very thankful for the leadership of Pakistan and its people. They are great people, and we are very proud of the contribution of Pakistan in all events and all measures in the Islamic world, and of course in the Islamic cooperation in all fields. Excellencies, distinguished participants, some 50 years ago, exactly in 1969, the OIC was founded by a joint initiative of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the Kingdom of Morocco. It was decided to have its headquarters hosted in Jeddah near Mecca al-Mukarramah. In the course of its 5 decades of existence, our organization has managed to gain respect as a symbol of solidarity and become a hub and a ray of hope for Muslims across the globe. Over the years, it has served a vital for understanding and among the Islamic countries, despite the vast diversity of cultural across the 5 continents that spans OIC membership, which now has 57 states around the world, inhabited by 1,700,000,000 Muslims around the globe. Our organization is committed to serving the priority issues at the heart of member states. Political agenda includes the Palestine, Jammu and Kashmir dispute, the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, the Rohingya humanitarian case in Myanmar, along with a number of other issues of paramount importance to us all. Regarding development in Yemen, Iraq, Libya, Syria, Afghanistan, and the Sahel region, the OIC has always stressed the importance of working out peaceful solutions through dialogue, understanding, and national reconciliation processes, and remains ready to support any effort to that end. The OIC is committed to the promotion of the long-established value of Islam, including tolerance, peaceful coexistence, interfaith dialogue, alliance of civilization and mutual understanding, and of course fighting terrorism and extremism. The OIC has taken many initiatives to combat the radicalism and intolerance, to fight against Islamophobia and defamation of religious and support efforts meant to foster counter-terrorism mechanisms. For this purpose, the OIC has established the Voice of Wisdom Center and the Islamophobia Observatory to project the true and peace-promoting values of Islam. It also developed a scholarship program to raise hope among the youth, boys and girls around the Islamic world. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in seeking to address the multiple challenges of the 21st century, the OIC has developed the first 10-year program of action up to 2015, and its successor action program covering the period between 2016 to 2025. The twin program reflects a shared vision of the OIC states to ensure peace and security, women and youth empowerment, advancing children's rights, concerning the welfare and social security of the elderly and persons with special needs and disability, preserving the family values, security and cooperation, and the promotion of good governance and the rule of law, among others. Excellencies, we are meeting today against the background of the challenges of coronavirus. This pandemic that has gripped the world immediately following the outbreak of corona. The OIC held a virtual meeting of the Health Steering Committee at the level of ministers and executive committees meeting at the level of foreign ministers in April on the implication of coronavirus and the joint response to its impact. OIC institutions launched a set of initiatives as part of joint and humanitarian emergency responses, supporting member states in coping with the ongoing crisis. In fact, if we are to measure the level of solidarity that exists in the intergovernmental OIC action and response at this time of a crisis. OIC institutions also launched a set of initiatives within the framework of joint responses and the humanitarian emergency, supporting member states at the ongoing crisis. The Islamic Development Bank launched a strategic program worth $2,300,000,000 to support member states through establishing a center called the Response Center. Efforts and the Islamic Solidarity Fund also launched an account to assist member states, especially OIC, less developed and most affected, to enhance their capabilities in facing the coronavirus, mainly in the health sector. The International Islamic Fiqh Academy, one of OIC subsidiary organ, also held a medical symposium in coronavirus and related to medical treatment and, of course, Sharia provisions. Please, Excellencies, distinguished participants, join me to implore His Almighty, to Allah, to strengthen cooperation and solidarity with the Muslim Ummah and among the member states of the OIC. Ameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Ladies and gentlemen, we now move to our keynote speaker for today, Ambassador Rizwan Saeed Sheikh. Ambassador Sheikh is Pakistan's permanent representative to the OIC. Ambassador Sheikh has a diverse experience with particular reference to multilateral diplomacy. He has been the lead negotiator on behalf of groups like NAM and G77 in over 20 multilateral negotiations, particularly during his tenure as a member of Pakistan's permanent mission to the United Nations in Geneva. He has also served on important positions at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Pakistan, including the UN, the US, and the South Asia divisions. I now request Ambassador Rizwan Saeed Sheikh for his keynote address. Sir, you have the floor.
Can you please take him in on the frame?
Unmute. Demo, unmute him. Rizwan sir, go ahead, please. Rizwan sir, we can't hear you.
Now?
Can you speak, please?
Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Very faintly. Very faintly.
Faintly.
Yes.
Now?
Better.
Can you hear me now?
It's better, but still faint.
I think this is as close as I can get to the microphone.
Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
Better.
Respected and honorable ambassadors, Khalid Mahmood and Ambassador Izzaz Chaudhry, distinguished participants, the team of Institute of Strategic Studies, Islamabad. It's a distinct honor and pleasure to be part of this important seminary activity as the permanent representative of Pakistan to OIC. As it has been mentioned already that it's the 50th year, actually the last day of the 50th year. So what I would do is that in very short time, but still I would need and seek some indulgence. I would try and cover in three areas, which is perhaps retrospection, introspection, and prospection of what OIC has been up to, how it was founded, for what has it been doing, what it is doing right now, and what can be done, particularly from Pakistan's standpoint, since as Ambassador Izzaz mentioned, I have been part of the inside the Secretariat as well, as not only the Secretary General spokesman, but more proudly as the first founding director of the Independent Permanent Human Rights Commission, which perhaps is the most credible body of the organization, and has actually contributed to changing the perception of the Muslim world that it is ready and willing to address issues, including the human rights issues, which at least previously was perceived to be a contradiction in terms when it came to the Muslim world and human rights. But just to say that OIC is certainly an institutional expression of the pan-Islamic sentiment, and has been for the past 50 years, since the conditions which have already been narrated, in which it was founded during the Arab-Israeli war in late 1960s. It has lent institutional voice to concerns and interests of the Muslim world. It has had its crests and troughs as an organization, certainly. There were high points. I think it's not just that we are the spokespersons of Pakistan or from the diplomatic service of Pakistan, but even most people who have dealt with OIC and Ambassador Izzaz Chaudhry and Ambassador Khalid Mahmood are right here amongst us. They would vouch, and others, non-Pakistanis, would vouch that the highest point in OIC's history was Second Summit in Lahore in 1974. And actually, I would say that it somehow coinciding with the oil shock generated a larger than life threat perception, which in a way and from the advantage of hindsight contributed somehow adversely to the prospects of OIC moving forward as an international organization, because it alerted and alarmed too many people around the world against this pan-Islamic sentiment which was being forged in those days. But the organization has performed well. It is important to understand, which perhaps we don't and miss out even in the practice of foreign policy in Pakistan, even in our diplomatic service, that it is not just a headquarter. OIC is not just a headquarter. Ambassador Izzaz rightly pointed out that it's a collection of member states, and it can only do, like any other international organization, what the member states want it to do. So the blame should not be on the organization per se, but it should be on the member states which get it to do or do not get it to do one or the other thing. So, but it's important that it has been fashioned essentially on the UN system. It's not just the second largest international organization, but it has a whole network of bodies, affiliated, specialized organs. I think the two best performing institutions that can be named are, not that I was its founder, but IPHRC, the Independent Permanent Human Rights Commission, and more significantly than that, And over an extended period of time, the Islamic Development Bank is easily and by far the best performing institution, not only in the Muslim world, in the world of international multilateral development banks. Maybe you don't even, perhaps most people wouldn't know that the current president of Islamic Development Bank is the acting current head. He is the current head of the organization of IMDBs. For the year 2020, Mr. Bandar Najjar is the head of the IMDB. So that's the prestige it enjoys in organizations like Islamic Development, the Asian Development Bank, the World Bank, the IMF. There's some 10 IMDBs where the president of Islamic Development Bank is heading this. And it is an OIC institution. OIC is a parent body. And that's what it has done over the years in terms of the network that it has produced, or the net that it has cast in terms of starting from the political work essentially and expanding into areas of economic, social, commercial benefit and advantage to the member states and for the member states. I'll come to this point later, at least in the winding up part of it, that what we can do with it. But to say that for Pakistan at least, OIC has certainly played a role in basically most significantly on the Kashmir issue, particularly since the 1990s, early 1990s. It has been one of the longest standing items on the OIC agenda. It is said, and at times, that OIC perhaps should have done more, has not done enough, is not doing enough, but we need to understand that OIC is the best sort of thing that happens to Pakistan even today as we speak, in terms of ensuring and keeping the relevance of the UN resolutions alive. As we speak, it's only Pakistan that is saying that UN resolutions are relevant and alive with regard to the Kashmir issue. And then it is OIC lending the voice and weight of 57 member states each time it speaks, until it spoke last on the 5th of August. It issued a statement after completion of 1 year of the actions taken by Modi government in 2019, August 5th. And the last sentence, if you read that statement, says in accordance with the relevant UN resolutions. So we have to remember that it is not OIC resolutions which are going to solve the issue. It is the UN resolutions which are going to solve the issue. And OIC is putting the weight all the time, permanently, of 57 of its member states as the second largest international organization in supporting the relevance of UN resolutions, which form our paramount locus standi on this particular issue and our legal standpoint on this issue. Well, it is not fashioned, it is fashioned on the UN system, but not exactly in terms of its charter. So it does not have chapter 6 or chapter 7 as there is in the UN charter, which calls for action. It does not have, for instance, for want of another word, say green helmets along the lines of blue helmets in the UN system. So it cannot take, kinetic action perhaps, but that is the best OIC can do under these circumstances. Perhaps we as Pakistan, now that we have a permanent mission, can be more active in terms of seeking an action plan. Maybe there are areas in the resolution that has been technically updated over the years, which have gone begging, even for instance, the Secretary General writing a letter to the Indian President, drawing attention, seeking a fact-finding mission from the Independent Permanent Human Rights Commission to Kashmir, things like that. There are things that can be done, but there is still a limit to what OIC can do, and it is already doing as a political organization from a political standpoint, and that we need to recognize as we go forward and craft and devise our policy on Kashmir at the OIC forum accordingly. Now, the other important thing that perhaps is relevant to point out is the introspection element, the situation that is obtains now. But OIC in the I would say, frankly, has deteriorated in terms of not only its effectiveness, but its working even. To put it succinctly, or to try and encapsulate it, well, as the second largest international organization, we should be able to judge and see that there is a space for an organization like OIC in the international arena, but that space has been currently occupied and recently, more over the past decade or so, or more than that, has been occupied by the Arab League. And that element is actually also creeping into the organization itself with over the past, say, 7 years now with the Secretary Generalship of OIC with Saudi Arabia. And since we are in a candid discussion in a think tank setting, I can share with you my personal assessment, which needs to be certainly ascertained, but I get a feeling that we are moving even as OIC towards the Arab League model. What I mean to say is that ultimately maybe Jeddah would be not only the headquarter, but perhaps the Secretary Generalship would be permanently with the host country, like along the lines of Arab League. The incumbent is seeking a renewal, and it was Africa's turn in 2013. They ceded their turn in favor of Saudi Arabia. Now they're being asked to see even the second renewal possible of renewal in favor of Saudi Arabia again. And I have a feeling that it is going to continue. So we need to factor that in, and we need to shape our policy and our assessments accordingly going forward. It is being not only Arabized, it is being Saudized. So we have to be very mindful of it and try and act accordingly. Now, what can it do for Pakistan? Well, we criticize OIC that yes, it has, perhaps that criticism is in order. It could have done more. There's always room for improvement in anything that goes around in the international politics. Yes, OIC might not have done what it should have done, but have we basically tried to tap it fully? Have we done our homework? Have we looked at OIC beyond an organization from which we seek passage of two performer resolutions every year, one on Kashmir and one on India-Pakistan peace process? Maybe we have an interest in Islamophobia. Yes, we are the permanent chair of OIC human rights activity in Geneva. But have we looked at it beyond that narrow kind of lens that we have been using for OIC? Let me give you the facts as they stand now. We as Pakistan, given our economic difficulties that we are having recently and over the past few years actually, may not be looking at OIC as an organization from which we can draw economic advantage. But even in the current scheme of political things in this region and the broader region of Middle East and West Asia, going to almost the borders of Europe, Turkey and Iran, with the current state of affairs that they have with the host country, are, I wouldn't use another word, squeezing the OIC system for the last drop, particularly the Islamic Development Bank, as we speak, to their advantage. And it may sound undiplomatic in front of teachers like Ambassador ISSI Chaudhry that I have had the honor of working with. But sir, these are the words. I mean, they are squeezing the system for the last drop. And we can look at how we are dealing with the organization, how we are looking at it. Islamic Development Bank, insurance arm, Iran can't work without it. It's the window that opens to the rest of the world. Turkey, Malaysia, Indonesia are utilizing the system of other organizations, not only the bank, the trade center, the ISSI. Turkey actually is using the standing committee, which is COMSEC on Commerce and Trade, as an instrument of its foreign and trade policy. The first term of President Erdogan, the current president and the former prime minister, the way he enhanced trade to the tune of 50% with the Muslim countries was essentially using COMSEC and using the OIC network. Have we looked at it that way? Perhaps not. Can we do it? Yes, we can. Because it's not only a question of inventing something. We're not going to do something new. We may not perhaps be imitating, but we can at least emulate the models that are already existing there. As I speak, my counterpart missions, permanent missions of Turkey and Egypt are leveraging the OIC system properly and fully in terms of trade opportunities, in terms of other economic opportunities, even investment opportunities. In the middle of COVID, end of July this year, 2020, Turkey, with the state of affairs that it has with this relations it has with this region, created an OIC court of arbitration in Istanbul, for international investments. And so that is what is going on. We have to look at it at the OIC, not just from the lens of Ummah or the rhetoric that goes around it. We have to look at it at the OIC. We have to approach the organization as a paying customer. It is the second largest international organization. We have to draw the maximum value for money that we contribute, not only in terms of the dollars and cents that we pay vis-a-vis our contribution on the scale of assessment that goes around, but also OIC system is basically full of Pakistani professionals. We are the second largest nationality after Saudis in the Islamic Development Bank. And in the last gathering of Pakistanis working in the Islamic Development Bank, they told me, Ambassador Saab, hum aapki team hai, aap hame bataiye kya karna. Where is, how do you want us to point out where the money is and we'll get it for Pakistan? So this is the opportunity that exists, and perhaps we have not been able to look at the organization beyond the narrow political lens of 2 resolutions and just running away with those 2 resolutions and then criticizing them whether the content was significant, not significant, or helping the Kashmir cause. As I've already said, it is the best legal thing that can happen to Pakistan's stand vis-a-vis the UN resolutions. Already I have pointed that out. Now, the other significant issue that perhaps needs to be, it's the elephant in the room, but perhaps needs to be mentioned, is that there is a polarization these days in the organization. Even the erstwhile rift that existed between Iran and Saudi Arabia has been relegated to the background, and it is now Turkey and the Arabs, particularly the current summit chair and the host country, as well as the current CFM chair, which is the UAE. Every OIC meeting is basically marred by this visible and widening rift. That is also where Pakistan has the opportunity. Well, there can be a fear factor that, well, how to, we have good relations with Saudi Arabia, we have good relations with Turkey, how to, wriggle out of this thing. Actually, there's a positive side of this threat that we can play a balancing act. And the best opportunity that is being offered is next year, when Pakistan would be hosting the 48th session of OIC Council of Foreign Ministers, as was mentioned in previous statements, that we have already hosted 2 summits and 4 sessions of Council of Foreign Ministers. We'll be hosting the 5th one next year. And not only that, we will have the opportunity practically for 3 years in terms of how the organization operates. And that's always important to keep that in mind. Again, broadening the lens or the aperture that we have been using in looking at OIC. As soon as Niger hosts the 47th session in Niamey, Pakistan would become part of the OIC Executive Committee for 3 years. So we'll have a position of prominence for 3 years as part of the Troika, as the incoming chair, the sitting chair, and the outgoing chair. So there is an opportunity to recast our approach, to recast even the net, and this time cast it wider, utilize this position of prominence that we're getting to leverage the system fully and institutionalize Pakistan's engagement through initiatives that can be there. ComStech, for instance, is the science and technology arm of OIC. President of Pakistan is the ex-officio chair. As I have already said, Turkey has utilized ComStech as an instrument of its foreign and trade policy. Given the health pandemic that we have, it's a trouble for everybody around the world, but perhaps there is an opportunity in this threat that if we can enhance the roles of ComStech, revive the significance and salience of ComStech in the OIC system, why can't we use it as an instrument of foreign and trade policy? That is something that even as we go, we are trying to present practical propositions in front of the government. As already mentioned, there is Islamic Chamber of Commerce, again, that is a whole network of trade organizations, trade bodies, trade entities available to the Muslim world that are with that Islamic Chamber of Commerce. It's more or less a dormant organization. Why can't we revive it and use it properly to certainly our advantage as basically we go forward? One point that I would specifically want to mention is the possibility of changing Pakistan's image through OIC. The buzzwords that we keep using and hearing, like economic diplomacy and Africa outreach, which are more or less, frankly, slogans as we speak, if they can be operationalized at least for one on the OIC track through African member states of OIC, there are prospective markets. If we can't get the OIC and Africa markets, it would be even more difficult and far more difficult to reach the European and Western destinations and try and make inroads there. There is some goodwill. There is a brand name of Pakistan as the founding member, as the second largest Muslim country, and in a light vein, given the fact that population is our most credible statistic, we are going to leave Indonesia behind within this decade and will be the largest Muslim country in the world. So that is an additional leverage that we should be looking towards in terms of deciding on our engagement with the OIC system. Now, on South-South Triangle cooperation, we can use this program under the OIC, under the Islamic Development Bank auspices, to enhance Pakistan's image, actually to transform Pakistan's image from a country that is always at the receiving end. We have our hand like this, to change our hand like this, because that offers the opportunity. I'll briefly describe it. On a project-to-project basis, the system is that there will be three partners, triangular cooperation, a recipient country, say Senegal in this case, just for an example, a provider country, Pakistan, and perhaps Pakistan offering something that it can do, number of things, NADRA, database registration system, a whole microcredit system, the nuclear medicine that we should practically have a monopoly in the Muslim world at least, the HMC, even defense production that we can offer to the OIC market on a project-to-project basis, IT that we can do to Senegal. The working method would be that Pakistan as the provider country would be contributing 15 to 20% of the cost. Senegal, for instance, as the recipient country would be contributing again 15 to 20% of the cost. And Islamic Development Bank will be picking up the bulk of the, which is like 60, 70% of the cost. And there can be innovative ways to, even if we have financial problems, to look at the 20%. I mean, for instance, in a project from the Atomic Energy Commission, if an individual, an office bearer, is already being paid salary by government of Pakistan, is made part of the project, the contribution financial would be there, at least in notional terms. So there are ways to do it. There are opportunities that exist, but we have to decide to stop looking at OIC as just a political organization. Stop looking at OIC from the perspective of availability or lack of support and rhetoric around the concept of Muslim Ummah. Well, it is one aspect, but it is not the aspect, and it's not a practical operational aspect. And start looking at engaging with the broader OIC system. Now, as the permanent mission of Pakistan and being the first permanent representative, which is certainly a distinct honor, and I take pride in doing that, in setting up the mandate and the activities. The objectives that we have perhaps in mind, and I would just go through listing them, is basically not only just enhancing Pakistan's footprint in the organization, perhaps thwarting Indian ingress that is increasing, maintaining a steady momentum of engagements and pronouncements on Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, engaging comprehensively with the entire broader OIC system on a project-to-project basis, and tapping the economic potential of various OIC bodies, particularly the Islamic Development Bank, ISSI, COMSEC, and COMSTEC, as we go forward. I would even go to the extent of saying that with a view to, at least, if nothing else, avoiding the fragmentation of effort, and I've asked my government, I would seek the support of Institute of Strategic Studies as not only a primary but a resourced think tank, a well-resourced think tank of the government of Pakistan and the entire Pakistani system to support that endeavor, that with a view to avoiding fragmentation of effort and increasingly Saudized and Arabized OIC, Arab League and GCC should all be placed under the mandate of this mission, because will be able to lobby at the source. It's again perhaps one sad aspect that India is an observer at Arab League, we are not. And we are dealing with Arab League, from Cairo, we are dealing with OIC, now in Jeddah, we are dealing with Gulf Cooperation Council in Riyadh. Now that we have this mission, perhaps this fragmentation of effort can be avoided, and we can centralize this control and be able to lobby at the source vis-a-vis the different aspects, political, economic, in that organization, and perhaps engage the Arab League on Kashmir issue. I would want to engage the Arab League on Kashmir issue, and that is currently, in the current scheme of things, the source, as I said already, that there is a space for organization of Islamic cooperation like organization, but it is currently occupied by the Arab League. So perhaps we need that mandate to be able to work at the source, and the Institute of Strategic Studies, other distinguished participants that are there, perhaps can contribute to that effort, and maybe we can focus more on research on OIC, starting with this event. And myself and my team here in Jeddah would always be available to provide ideas, to share views, to share realistic assessments of the way the things are transpiring here in this city, in this organization, and in the broader system that OIC represents and stands for. I look forward to a very interactive and lively kind of perhaps the question answer session. Even beyond this event, let this debate begin and continue. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Rizwan. Let me reiterate that the Institute of Strategic Studies has always and will always stand by our permanent mission in Jeddah for any kind of assistance that it requires. Ladies and gentlemen, we now move on to our next speaker, Mr. Khalid Rahman. Mr. Khalid Rahman is Director General of the Institute of Policy Studies here in Islamabad. He has a vast experience in research, training, and management. His main focus of research, ladies and gentlemen, has been on national and regional politics, religious education institutions, and China. Khalid sir, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much. Let me begin by stating the obvious, that 50 years is a sufficient enough time for an organization to consolidate its foundations and fortify its position. When I look at OIC from this perspective, I feel it could be termed reasonably successful to the extent that it provides a platform, has continued to stick to a comprehensive charter, has a number of organs, runs a secretariat, and has an infrastructure in place. Let us also recognize that from the perspective of population, geographic presence, and economic resources, it does represent a major part of the world. In addition, it remains to be a forum that has both homogeneity as well as diversity, which is an extremely important feature required for a successful multilateral organization. I should also highlight that the organization has also established specialized institutions to focus on cooperation in various fields of life, and these institutions are performing quite successfully, as has been mentioned by Ambassador Rizwan just now. The conference continues to raise its voice over issues faced by the Muslim world. Having said this, we have to admit that as an organization, it has not been able to perform effectively and does not enjoy the importance and significance that as the second biggest multilateral forum of the world, it should have enjoyed. Here, just as a footnote, I may add that the largest multilateral forum has also not performed better in any way. Now, one may point out several reasons for OIC's less than expected performance and image, but the fact remains that most of these reasons are interconnected, and the biggest among them is the internal political differences and polarization. Associated with it is the absence or the lack of any proactive common agenda and strategy in the wake of ever-evolving global circumstances. And I would highlight proactive common agenda. Let us be very clear. Internal differences in a diverse group are but natural, but these get multiplied when at any given point of time a common agenda and a proactive agenda is missing. For sustaining relationship, you have to have something, even small things, to pursue together. The fact that a good part of the Muslim world is playing in the hands of global powers is rightly cited as another reason for poor performance of OIC. And in this context, the resources of the Muslim world, which were to be used for mutual cooperation, are being exploited for the benefit of some others' political and economic interests. Consequently, we find that some member countries are engaged in fighting each other, while some others are serving as the proxy of other states. Covert and overt moves against each other are the obvious manifestation of this scenario. Thus, while the member countries and the organizations are losing, the situation has left little space to address the issues of Muslim minorities being subjected to persecution, oppression, and humiliation in different parts of the world. What to do then? We need to recognize that the reasons for OIC's ineffectiveness and inefficiency are pretty much the same, which dictates continuation of its existence and stability, of course, with a reinforced toil. To me, the biggest encouragement out of this all, otherwise a depressing performance, is the fact that despite all internal differences, the platform still exists. As a matter of fact, the changes and challenges arising due to the dynamism of circumstances has intensified its need manifold. Besides the increasing number of political issues, Islamophobia and blasphemy are, for instance, some of the topics causing considerable agitation within the Muslim world, and OIC needs to take notice of it. It has been taking, but perhaps a revived attempt is needed. Then there is a part of UN social agenda, which at occasions being contradictory to the Islamic value framework, causing disturbances in the Muslim social and family structures. There are also issues of migration and refugees. Muslim minorities and freedom of Muslim regions are some of the topics which need a constant attention as ever. Let me, however, stress that all of these issues fall in the list of reactive agendas, whereas the real need of time is to identify and address agendas proactively. In fact, proactivity is relevant to each and every issue we are facing today. It is basically related to the mindset and approach with which you deal with issues at hand or the emerging ones. Let me also emphasize that when we talk of proactivity, each and every member of the conference has an opportunity to be proactive to push the organization to a proactive agenda. And just now, Ambassador Rizwan has cited the example of Turkey, that how it is moving. Pakistan, being one of the key founders and being one of the most significant countries among the members, can and should certainly lead from the front. Today, peace and security, poverty and hunger, as well as food security, environment and climate change, uneven distribution of wealth and resources, and other similar issues are cited as the key challenges to the world. All these need attention. But to me, these are all related to distributive justice, which in turn requires a focus on the global economic and overall governance. All these issues, in a way, are also included in UN Sustainable Development Goals. There, however, is a need for a proactive approach to address these agenda points in an Islamic framework. I must recognize that it is easier said than done. Still, I would stress that a proactive strategy is inevitable. We need to make relevant, consistent, and timely consultations and moves, not through media, but on ground. OIC has the potential, but to exhibit and exploit that potential, some members will have to come forward and play this role. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Khalid Saab, for your comments and especially for sticking to the 5 minutes timeline. Our next speaker, ladies and gentlemen, is Mr. Ahmed Qureshi. Mr. Ahmed Qureshi is the Executive Director of the Youth Forum for Kashmir. Mr. Qureshi is a well-known journalist and a famous TV anchor. Qureshi sir, you have the floor, sir.
Yes, thank you very much, Najam Saab, and it's a singular honor for me to be here, part of this very distinguished panel, and I'm very grateful to the chairman of ISSI and Ambassador Khalid Mahmood Saab, and also to the Director General of ISSI, Ambassador Izaz Chaudhry Saab, and very honored to see here very distinguished faces, Ambassador Tajammul Altaf Saab and Khalid Rahman Saab, and also, of course, our permanent representative to OIC, Ambassador Rizwan Sheikh Saab. I'll be very quick. I'll mention just 2 key points. First, I must say here that the Organization of Islamic Cooperation is definitely an impressive multilateral organization, which has actually assumed more importance in these days, not diminished. Its importance has not diminished. It has assumed more importance, and it is a singular example of cooperative joint action by like-minded states. OIC also, in my view, I think it's very important for us to understand how it gives us space in the international system. OIC is the face of Muslim states to the world and a vehicle for the positive contribution of Islam and Muslims to the global civilization. And this is very important. Muslims and Muslim countries and Muslim nations, we should not be just recipients of whatever the international system produces, but we need to contribute to this international system. And one of the very instrumental, very effective, and very important tools that we have in our hand right now is the OIC as a face for the Muslim world, to the rest of the world, and as a vehicle for positive contribution to the global civilization. And it is a question, a civilizational question. So we need to increase our contribution to the global civilization, and OIC is the platform for that, to contribute to the international political structure. The OIC also takes on difficult and challenging task of ensuring that member states contribute to shaping the international discourse and influence policies and multilateral developments. One of the things that I would like to also mention is that the OIC has the difficult and thankless task of influencing complex and often intractable issues and conflicts, taking along the vast and sometimes conflicting interests of its member states while dealing with international partners and players. And I think we need to appreciate this. I think there's a lack of appreciation of this aspect of OIC's work. Such a huge organization trying to take on board the interests of its members, 57 countries, and then dealing with key big powers and international powers. The key and often silent role, and this is very important, the key and often silent role played by the OIC in maintaining and protecting Muslim and Christian endowments, or what we call in Sharia, the awqaf, the Muslim and Christian endowments in the occupied Palestinian territories. This has been a major role played by the OIC and often is overlooked. The OIC protected Muslim and Christian endowments in the occupied territories, organizing diplomatic efforts to engage stakeholders and marshaling the resources necessary to ensure the protection of the sites holy to billions of Muslims and Christians worldwide is a commendable achievement that often gets obscured by politics, but that will be remembered, I'm sure, in history as something that no other entity or actor could have performed without the collective resources available to OIC. And I think we need to appreciate also the OIC member states who used their diplomatic outreach to everybody, including to the state of Israel, with which the majority of OIC's member states do not have diplomatic relations, but having some members of the OIC having those contacts with the state of Israel, and there are many prominent ones. Those channels actually helped the OIC deal with this, and OIC played a very important role. I think this role in the occupied Palestinian territories, protecting the Islamic and Christian endowments, is very important. Also, very quickly, I must say this, that the OIC played a distinguished role in keeping the Kashmiri cause alive internationally. And of course, Ambassador Rizwan and others mentioned that very in much detail. I will just simply add that there were times, due to different reasons, maybe because of the situation in our region, because our relationship with India, or maybe the wars in Afghanistan, sometimes some governments in Pakistan had to sort of turn their attention away from Kashmir to other more pressing, urgent national security issues. At those times, when Kashmir cause actually had no one looking after it, and there were such times in our history, it was the platform of the OIC actually that kept the Kashmir cause alive, along with, of course, the United Nations, although the UN had been quiet for about 48 years until it finally spoke and ended its silence on Kashmir in June and July 2018 with the release of the first comprehensive UN report on Kashmir. So it was actually the OIC that was the key vehicle that kept the Kashmir cause alive, even when sometimes Pakistan, as the main advocate of Kashmir cause, got busy and involved in other more important pressing national security matters. So this is a key point, providing international representation to Kashmiris and magnifying Pakistan's diplomatic and political efforts for justice, peace, and conflict resolution are historic milestones. So this is a key thing that we should really be grateful for the OIC to have played that role. And like any multilateral organization, of course, one with this size like the OIC of course has seen ups and downs. But I think we need to, and I'm watching this, and maybe Ambassador Rizwan can explain this even much better. But we can see right now a keen interest by big powers in OIC. For example, the last summit in May 2019, the Mecca summit, President Xi Jinping engaged the OIC heads of states that were there. And China is very keen to engage the OIC. So is Russia. I think the Russians are even pushing for a full membership and have activated the Russian Muslim community to very robustly engage with the OIC to ensure that Russia gets a seat within the OIC. And of course, the Western powers, the United States, the EU are often silent participants in the activities of the OIC. And so there is a very obvious, discernible interest by big powers in the direction of the OIC, and a desire to engage the OIC, understanding the importance of OIC. And of course, with that, I will connect the role that the OIC has played in issues like Bosnia-Herzegovina and Kosovo and other issues. I think it can, the importance and role of OIC in international political structure and diplomacy cannot be underestimated at all. And I think the tendency in Pakistan to underestimate this role goes to the detriment of our interests. And it was very well explained by Ambassador Rizwan and also by Ambassador Izaz that are, I think we need to change the way we look at these organizations. And I often say this, that the most harshest criticism that the United Nations and the OIC receive anywhere, unfortunately, comes from inside Pakistan. I'm not referring to the government of Pakistan per se. The government of Pakistan has very positive engagement with both these organizations. But what I'm referring to, the Pakistani strategic community, the Pakistani media, the mindset that we have developed of our young and upcoming the younger generation, the young policy analysts and people who are working in this discourse, a very negative attitude toward the multilateral system and specifically toward the United Nations. And we forget that these are tools to an end and not an end in themselves. And it all depends on how we use them, as was very aptly and very eloquently explained by Ambassador Rizwan Sheikh. So I think it's a matter of satisfaction to see these big powers really taking interest in OIC's work as it moves ahead. And I will just conclude here my very last point by saying that the OIC, yes, we have these issues between the member states, and I think it was very well explained by Khalid Rahman Saab and Ambassador Rizwan as well, the issue of Turkey and Iran and Saudi Arabia and the Arabization and the Saudiization. But I think there's a lot of a scope for Pakistan to benefit from the OIC platform. And I think we are lacking in lobbying. There's much that can be done. Having worked most of my time as a journalist in that region, I can say very confidently that Pakistani lobbying efforts have been lacking for much of this time. And it's not because of any want in our diplomatic capacity. We have the finest diplomats, and we have shown what we can do the way we did back in the OIC summit in 1974 and in other areas of OIC's work. So it's not an issue of capacity. We have the diplomatic capacity. We have the ability. I think it's an issue of vision, and it's an issue of policy at the government level and at the level of our political system in Pakistan, the way we look at OIC and the way we look at our role. I think we forget that we back in during the Cold War and also back in the 1980s and also 1990s, we created very amazing partnerships in this region, and we changed the course of global politics with regards to Afghanistan, with regards to Cold War, thanks to the relationships and the lobbying that at some points in our history in Pakistan we made under some governments, under Ayub Khan, under Prime Minister Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, under General Ziaul Haq. We created very effective partnerships and we changed the course of history. We can do that again, but the only way to do that is through positive engagement and understanding that these are tools at our disposal. The United Nations, the OIC, we need to use them. We need to interact, and I think, and there's a tremendous scope also within the Arab League. And I will conclude by just this example for Ambassador Rizwan. I think in 2018, exactly 2 years ago, I was attending this conference in Abu Dhabi. I think it was the Abu Dhabi Strategic Debate. And the former Secretary General of the Arab League, Mr. Amr Moussa, who is very influential, who has been for a long time the former Foreign Minister of Egypt as well. He was present, and unfortunately, there was very limited presence or representation from Pakistan in terms of think tanks, which has increased since. But at that point, there was a huge delegation from Indian think tanks that was present. And I was very pleased to see Ambassador and former Foreign Minister of Egypt and former Secretary General of Arab League, Mr. Amr Moussa, actually question the Indian representatives present on India's direction and the rise of Islamophobia and xenophobia and extremism in India and the change in the policy. So I think the impression that we have in Pakistan that somehow it's a lost cause, that we cannot shift mindsets in this region with regards to key issues in our for our foreign policy is not right. And I think there's a lot of room we can do. We should engage positively. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Ahmed Qureshi Saab, for your comments. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a commemorative event, but we have factored in a very short 5 minutes interactive discussion or a Q&A, as you may call it. And I have about 3 questions with me. all of them directed at our permanent representative in Jeddah, Ambassador Rizwan Saeed Sheikh. I will put all of them together to Ambassador Sheikh and give him a brief 5 minutes to answer them. Sheikh Saab, the first question is, what is the position of the OIC on the establishment of diplomatic relations with Israel by some of the Arab states? Number two, with some OIC member states advocating for India's inclusion into the organization as an observer member state, what will this mean for the Jammu and Kashmir dispute? Number three, what tangible steps are being taken by the OIC to address and curb the surge of Islamophobia around the world, especially in India and Europe? Ambassador Rizwan Sheikh, sir, if you would be kind. He's left. Ambassador Sheikh, I'm afraid, has left. I believe he had another appointment. If any of our two other gentlemen would like to answer them. Khalid Saab, Ahmed Qureshi Saab.
I think all the questions required a certain level of information, which I do not have personally that information available.
Yeah, understandable.
I would like to, Mr. Najim, yes, I would like to just very quickly say, with regards to the relationship with Israel, I think the relationship that the Kingdom of Morocco, which is one of the two first founders of OIC that came up with this idea, Morocco and Egypt and Turkey and Iran before 1979. The relationship of these four major Muslim nations, Iran, Turkey, Egypt, and Morocco, with Israel, was helpful in back-channel diplomacy to the OIC in maintaining Al-Aqsa Mosque and other Islamic and Christian endowments. In some ways, this channel with the Jewish state is useful. How useful is this channel, the diplomatic relationship, in terms of moving forward the peace process and ultimately resulting in the establishment of the independent Palestinian state, is yet to be seen. We can have a long discussion on that, of course. But we've seen one benefit of having communication lines with the Jewish state in terms of how the OIC over the past 50 years was able to maintain Al-Aqsa Mosque, defer some of the plans that the extremist elements in Israel had with regards to Masjid al-Aqsa, with regards to other Muslim and Christian endowments. So there is a positive, in my view, there's a positive aspect to engaging with the Jewish state. That line of communication, that channel should exist. But of course, it is yet to be seen how those channels can be used really to resolve the main question at hand, which is, of course, the issue of the Palestinian state. And very quickly, I also must say that the OIC was very instrumental, and Pakistan played a huge role in that. And I think we should be I'm actually one of those people who are very proud of the role of the Pakistani diplomacy within the OIC and OIC's role with regards to working on Islamophobia and the demonization and the vilification of religions. And over the past 5 or 6 years, I remember a lot of back-channel diplomacy and a lot of work has been done on this, both in New York and in Geneva, and a lot of progress was made. And I think even when discussing this thing in Pakistan, I think we forget that much of the worst part of the Islamophobia is actually behind us. We have, and thanks to OIC, thanks to the role of Pakistan, thanks to the role of Egypt and Turkey and Saudi Arabia and many other Muslim countries, the worst part actually of the Islamophobia is frankly behind us. What we have now actually are isolated incidents like the ones we've seen recently and referred to by our foreign minister and also by Khalid Rahman Saab. Isolated incidents, but the larger part, the worst part is behind us, thanks again to the OIC and the work of the major Muslim countries.
Thank you, Ahmed Saab. Ladies and gentlemen, I would now request a Chairman, Board of Governors, Institute of Strategic Studies, Ambassador Khalid Mahmood, for his concluding remarks. May I point out that Chairman Ambassador Khalid Mahmood has been a former permanent representative of Pakistan to the OIC. Sir, you have the floor.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. First of all, I feel great pleasure to join in the Golden Jubilee celebrations of OIC. This occasion is of particular personal significance for me. I recall with great satisfaction my association with this organization as Pakistan's permanent representative. And also having hosted at the Institute of Strategic Studies, the former Secretary General of OIC, as well as OIC Special Envoy for Jammu and Kashmir. Ladies and gentlemen, we heard inspiring addresses from His Excellency, the Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi, and Secretary General OIC, His Excellency Yusuf bin Ahmad Al Hussain. They and other speakers, Ambassador Rizwan Saeed Sheikh, Khalid Rahman, and Ahmed Qureshi, have dwelt upon the origin of OIC, its aims, purposes, and principles, the organization's evolution, its achievements, and also its constraints. As we now know that the organization has an array of specialized agencies, subsidiary bodies, and it has well-established institutional framework. But as we see the Islamic world, I think the picture is rather bleak one. Constituting 1/5 of humanity spread over 57 countries, possessing 70% of world energy resources and roughly 50% of its raw material, with a nuclear capable member state, but representing only 5% of world GDP, and counting amongst the poorest and most backward nations. And the Islamic world also faces Islam being demonized, and even the just struggles for self-determination by Muslim people in Palestine, Kashmir, being tarred as terrorism. And under an ultra-nationalist RSS-inspired Hindutva Modi government, the Muslim minority in India is being targeted, discriminated, oppressed, and marginalized. But I think within the myriad constraints facing the organization, OIC has done what it is capable of doing. It has clearly and in categorical terms expressed the collective voice of the Islamic Ummah on Palestine, Kashmir, Afghanistan, Iraq, Bosnia, Kosovo, and so on, to mention some of these issues. This organization has delineated the path towards collective solidarity and security, promotion of commercial and economic cooperation and cultural cohesion. And in this regard, rightly, the role being played by the Islamic Development Bank has been mentioned. This organization is fighting against terrorism and extremism. More importantly, it is engaged in countering the campaign to defame the fair name of Islam and Islamophobia and promote interfaith harmony. We in Pakistan take pride that Pakistan is the founding member of OIC. It has played very active role in its deliberations and activities, and it has received full support, 100% support on the Kashmir cause. The OIC summits, Islamic Council of Foreign Ministers, the contact group on Kashmir, the special envoy on Kashmir, the Islamic Independent Commission of Human Rights, all have endorsed Pakistan's position on Kashmir fully. But I think this is time for self-introspection and reflection as well. The time for self-assessment and reckoning. Not to blame others for our ills, but to shoulder our own responsibilities. I think the problem lies in the implementation of OIC resolutions, decisions, and declarations. More than 3,200 OIC summit resolutions. What is the fate of their implementation? So it is essentially the question of the political will of the member states to match their words with action. Member states have to place the interests of Ummah over and above their individual national interests. I think that if eschewing internal polarization and differences, the member states can muster the courage to collectively act, employing all their resources, there is no reason OIC cannot influence the course of developments impinging on the Ummah's and member states' interests. I would like to conclude by reiterating, as has been done by Honorable Foreign Minister, Mr. Shah Mahmood Qureshi, Pakistan's full commitment to this organization. And as was pointed out by him, that as part of our commitment, reflection of it, we will be hosting the 48th Islamic Conference of Foreign Ministers. But before concluding, I would also like to express my great appreciation for the role of the host government, Saudi Arabia, in keeping this Islamic institution alive under very daunting circumstances. And we also appreciate the role being played by the present and the former Secretary Generals of OIC in trying to make this organization an effective body in the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of our event today. Let me take this opportunity to thank our distinguished speakers and all our participants for taking time out to join us at this event. I would especially like to thank our permanent representative in Jeddah for helping us acquire the message by the Secretary General of the OIC. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and take care. Allah Hafiz and Assalamu Alaikum.